Hi, my name is Elle Billing. I am a chronically ill queer femme, and I'm tired. I'm here this episode and every episode to dig at the roots of our collective fatigue, explore ways to direct our care in compassionate and sustainable ways, and harness creative expression to heal ourselves and our world. And welcome to HURF, Radical Care in a Late Capitalist Hexscape. My guest today is Kat Furtado. Kat Furtado is a contemporary mixed media artist from San Diego, California. She is a certified and licensed speech-language pathologist with a Master's of Art in Communication Science and Disorders. Her background as an SLP informs her creative endeavors. Storytelling, emotions, and recurrent themes of humanity are woven with care into her ethereal abstract artwork. To Furtado, art is an extension of nonverbal communication and validation of the human experience. Because communication continues to be the only true link between sentient beings, Furtado creates art as an essential communication endeavor. I'm really excited to have her on the podcast today. Welcome, Kat. Hi, Kat.
Hi.
Welcome to HURF.
I'm very excited.
Good. I'm excited too. It's great to have you here. We've known each other for, I was trying to figure it out, 4 years?
A few years at this point. Yeah, closer to 4.
Art buddies. Yeah, probably 2018, 2019. We were trying to figure it out. Was it last night? 2 nights ago? We were like typing out or on text, figuring out how long we'd known each other and how long we'd been painting. And
yeah, I think it was 2018 though.
That was the summer I spent in Wisconsin.
Yeah, you were in Wisconsin when we met.
So I feel like that's the safest way to say it on a public forum.
That's where you were when we met. So yes, that is accurate. So we just cracked the code.
Yeah. When you don't want to mention names on any side of on the other side of situations for either one of us. It's like the summer I was in Wisconsin.
We got it though.
Yeah, we got it. That's also the summer I got Winky.
Oh wow.
My dog.
Oh, that's
so
interesting.
That's a better way to look at it. I met you the summer I got my dog. What a great year.
That's a good spin. That's a great spin on it.
Those two things saved me from the rest of the yuck that was that year. Because that's the year my cousin passed away too.
Yeah, there was a lot going on for you.
I got sober that year too, though. So it was really quite a roller coaster. And then 2020 happened, and I looked back and I went, maybe 2018 wasn't quite so bad.
That is how it feels. It feels like it was an eternity ago and nothing. It feels like it was yesterday, and it feels like it was forever.
Yeah. What is time, really?
I don't even know.
I don't know.
I don't think anybody knows. I think that is why their brains more studious than mine, whose owners work to figure that out.
Yes. So I'm going to start with the questions I ask all of my guests right at the beginning. And that is, how have you received care this week?
That's a great question. There's been a lot going on. Today I was supposed to have a doctor's appointment, but that shifted. And so in terms of how I've received care, it's been mostly how I have ensured that care exists. So last night I went to bed a little bit earlier than I normally would. And that was enough. I just needed that reset. It's a lot. The world is a lot. Time is a lot.
Yeah. Adequate rest is super important, though.
It is. And it makes a mark on everything that you do from that point forward. So for me, just having had that time to just decompress and let go of everything, kind of reset my values. I sort of feel like I have a little bit more, not my values in terms of like my worth or what I believe in, but sort of like the values, that the store of energy that I have, the amount of energy kind of refreshed in a way that was an exponential amount. It was far more than it would have been if I had just had something healthy to eat or just had worked out. It was the combination of all of that really made a big difference.
Yeah. I didn't really understand the importance of, I understand the importance of rest, but I didn't understand how it could make or break me until, for one, I got sick. And then like I kind of understood it in college but in college you think you're invincible, I think. You pull your first all-nighter and you feel invincible. It's like, oh, look how much I accomplished and I only got 2 hours of sleep, and it's a kind of a badge of honor. And now that we're in our late 30s, it's like, no, how early I went to bed is a badge of honor.
That's a badge of honor for sure.
I mentioned the summer of Wisconsin. I was very sleep deprived during certain parts of that summer. And there were times where I knew the difference between me surviving and me losing my mind was like a nap. Like it really felt like I was so exhausted that just a couple extra hours of sleep was what was keeping me like hanging on.
Wow. That's intense.
Yeah. And then my last year of work, I was, my insomnia was really bad. I was in a lot of pain. Work was really stressful. And I remember looking at my partner and saying, something's really wrong with me, because like I was getting ready for work, but I was having trouble balancing. And we thought something was really neurologically wrong. Well, something's only mildly neurologically wrong, maybe moderately neurologically wrong. But I thought it was something far more severe. And really it was my illnesses compounded with the insomnia and the stress.
Wow.
But like it took me really a year to recover from burnout, just a year of like sleeping as much as I needed to.
I think it's important though to do that when you get the memo that that's what you need.
Yeah. So that's my long way of saying I'm really glad just going to bed early last night was so refreshing for you. That is not something to be downplayed.
No, it was a big deal. And I was very appreciative that my kids fell asleep early so that I could. Both of my kids actually have difficulty sleeping for different reasons. So it's been a wild ride.
I had one guest say that she had all these visions of, parenthood being this just romantic, matching sweaters and coffee cups, walking your family down the street, in your matching outfits type thing. And it turned out parenthood's just poop and violence.
Oh, God. Okay. So I don't know if I'd go that far, but I appreciate the sentiment.
I feel like in my family too, my mom had one vision of what motherhood was going to be. And then it turned out it was just 30 years of sleep deprivation. My sister was born 35 years ago, and my mom, I don't think, has slept through the night since.
Oh, gosh. Oh, my gosh.
So, we all have our thing, I guess.
We do, definitely. I think it's funny that you kind of brought that up. And also the idea of sort of feeling invincible in college. Sometimes I look at the way that I interpret the world or see things, and I think I must be so incredibly strange because I've literally never felt invincible. I've literally never felt like parenthood would be matching clothes and walking down the street happily into the sunset with my beautiful family. I think I've always sort of seen things in a different way. So it's fascinating to hear that because I have heard it multiple times, from so many people, and it's not my experience at all. I think I sort of expected things to be wild and different, and if you expect it, it's not going to happen the way you expect it. So throw all the rules out and figure it out.
To be fair, I also experienced like the complete opposite of the invincible college experience. I have very little sense of scale. So like it's either super great or super terrible. And I've mellowed a little bit with age, but it also takes a lot of practice to talk myself into moderation.
That's interesting. I think I'm every shade of gray, and that's how I see everything in every shade of gray, which makes the world exhausting and brilliant, right? Both and everything in between.
Well, see, there it
and
is.
All the intersections.
Those two ends, exhausting and brilliant and Yeah.
And every single possible intersection, which is why I find that, that kind of thinking is so comforting for me.
Yeah. So the listeners aren't going to be able to see the video of us. Like we can see each other when we're talking, we're recording the audio, and I can see you're painting right now.
I'm painting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anytime we video chat, you're painting.
I paint constantly because during the day I'm home working, and I don't have, my workday ends at the time I pick up my kids. So I have a very, very discrete short time period in which to work. And I find myself multitasking all the time.
No, that's great. So that dovetails really well to my next question, which is like how your creative practice, you're a painter, provides self-care for you or provides care for yourself or others. Can you share a bit about that?
I definitely can. To go back as far as I can, I've always been a person who thinks too much and worries too much and has too much going through her head. And the reality of it is that I had ADHD that was undiagnosed, and because it was undiagnosed, showed itself as anxiety, which became a sort of hypervigilant shield. And it protected me, but also gave me more anxiety. So it created a whirlpool wherein I would worry about something in order to make sure it didn't happen. Then I would make sure it didn't happen, but the hypervigilance was exhausting. And so then I was worried about how I was going to remember the other thing. And then I would worry about the other thing. And in order to sort of cope, I would read constantly. I mean, I would read a chapter book a day at least in childhood. And as that progressed, I mean, now I listen to 2 or 3 audiobooks or entire podcasts a day because I turn them on to 2.75 speed and I just go.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that you listen to them on double speed.
It's more than that. It's almost triple speed. I mean, I have to. It keeps my brain moving, and it also allows me respite. It allows my brain some space. So not knowing what was happening at the beginning of my parenthood journey, I was feeling depressed and anxious, as I had for most of my life. And without going into too much, the idea of this perfectionism, getting everything right, and the hypervigilance that fed it didn't allow me space to figure out if anything else was going on. And so when I had my first child and recognized that the depression had overwhelmed my entire life and my entire being, I had to reconnect with what was going on and figure out what was going on and why, so that I could do something about it. And painting became something that I did just to create space for myself. And it led me to recognize what was happening and how to fix it and what to do about it. And thankfully, there was a solution. So that, I mean, painting has been, I mean, I've been painting for 7 years tops. I mean, that's tip top. I picked up a paintbrush and did some hand lettering, a couple years before that. But I painted because it gave me space when I was depressed and when I was anxious. And then I paint now because it fulfills the need to be a part of something bigger than myself. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of in a nutshell the answer, but it was a very large nutshell.
Yeah, that's fine. Nutshells come in all sizes.
Yes, they do. And it's not easy to kind of describe. The margins are blurred, and it's not self-care. It is the only care in my life. It's not just, it's my way of caring for myself, but it's also my way of seeing my children as they are. When I can bring my little ones up to my studio, they have a space in my studio, they can paint there whenever they need to. They can create whatever they want to create. That's given them permission, which many people don't realize they need to do that. So then they have a space. And when they have a space, then they feel more connected. They feel more honest. They feel more open. They have that moment when they can share something that's vulnerable to them. And it continues. So it really just envelops everything in my world with, yes, self-care, but also care, just in general.
For everyone.
For everyone. Mm-hmm. I'm a better human when I paint. I don't think I'm a terrible human when I don't, but I do think that, because again, shades of gray, but I do think that it gives me space to reconstruct what I'm not understanding or what's making me upset or what's frustrating me. And also to make sense of the world, because you can't, right?
Right. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that makes sense. No, yeah, okay.
Got it. I get it.
Yeah. Would you be willing to share a little bit about how you went from just painting so you could reconnect with yourself to being a full-time artist?
Oh, yeah, I can share, but I still don't understand it myself, to be honest with you. I began painting. This is a story I share a lot. my daughter, when she was an infant, her window, the window in her room faced these giant pine trees. We live in Southern California, and there would be hundreds of hummingbirds out there. I mean, hundreds. Had to be so many different families. And, sometimes when you have that many hummingbirds, you see squawking and, some fighting between the males, but we didn't have any of that. No drama. These were just happy little hummingbirds, and they flitted around, and, my kid loved it. She would sit there and beg to watch them, and she'd wave to them, and we'd go outside and sit and watch them. And I realized she liked birds. So I started painting birds, even though I have to clarify that birds freak me out because they are dinosaurs. And that is like a very real, terrifying thought. Okay, now that we've gotten that out of the way.
Why I love birds.
Okay,
because they're dinosaurs.
I have immense respect for them, okay, to be very clear. I just happen to also be a speech therapist. So I know that their vocal mechanism, if in fact in the dinosaur age was larger, bird sounds as dinosaur sounds would be terrifying.
Absolutely.
And I can't get that out of my head. That thought exists and persists in its hypervigilant capacity in my brain. Mm-hmm. Dinosaurs are terrifying, also amazing. So anyway, I started by painting dinosaurs, and in their bird forms. And as I went on, I realized it was fun, and people saw them and they were like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know you were an artist." And I responded immediately with, "I'm not." And then so many people asked me that I started thinking, why do they think I'm an artist? This is so bizarre. And then I started taking classes, actually by Amanda Evanson Freund. I started taking her coursework, and one thing led to another, to another, to another.
It was the flower one, right?
Yes. The Secret Garden is one of her courses.
Yep. I've taken that one too. I think I know a lot of people have taken it, and it's really been transformative for their art journey. And
sure.
That's right about, I think, when you and I met also, because I remember your first collection, there was a huge flower painting with the striped flower pot.
I'm thinking back.
Was that your first
That
collection?
was before a collection. That was before releases for me.
It was just a big painting you sold.
That was the first painting I ever sold. So there were two paintings that I sold very early on. One of them was a friend of mine who believed in my abilities far before they were ready. And I spent months getting this piece to where I wanted it. And it still hangs in their home. And I get emotional about that piece, because not only did they believe in me when I really didn't believe in me quite yet, they thought I could make it a business. And so I did, right? I made it a business because of that. And then the second piece that I sold was that floral that you're referring to.
And you worked on that one for a long time too.
I did.
To get the flowers like just right. And I remember the big striped flower pot.
It took a long time to get that piece exactly where I wanted it. But I was very happy with it when it sold. It had a lot of interesting texture and line.
Yeah. Cool.
But it took me a long time to even figure out my style and how it related to that. So it hasn't changed much from there, but in other ways it's changed enormously. So kind of hard to describe that.
I understand that. I recently found a whole box of artwork from 2018. Well, my partner found a box of artwork from 2018 that I pulled out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about a lot of it. And some of it was from 2019. It was a bunch of flower paintings that I had started when my grandma passed away. I
actually remember that. Yeah.
And that was, I had purchased the Secret Garden class too, specifically because I'm not a floral painter. And I wanted to be able to paint flowers because flowers and gardening were so important to my grandma that it was a way for me to sort of connect with her after she had passed. Just, small art. I mean, the art world is big, but it's also small.
It's both and
yep.
And again, everything in between.
Both and neither. Yeah.
It's so intersectional. Yeah. Both and neither, yes.
So, you mentioned that you're a speech therapist.
I am.
And I used to be, and I still am, you're still certified or licensed. And I'm still licensed. A teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing. So we come from like similar niches.
Yeah, we do.
And at least from my perspective, and I am one person. So you can go ahead and correct me if you disagree. We worked in a field that was predominantly governed by a deficit model, medical model of difference in disability, and kind of dominates how professionals evaluate and plan and work with our students and clients.
Yes, in a lot of ways, because my field is so unique because there are so where your field has a very specific area that it supports. Mine has an extremely large area. We work from birth to dying, which you would do as well. But within that, we're working swallowing impairments, audiological support, vocal fold impairments and injuries, traumatic head injuries, stroke rehabilitation, childhood care, early intervention, feeding and swallowing in infancy, attachment. We have the whole,
Right.
and also speech impairments, like the whole,
and articulation and language development. Yeah,
exactly. It's massive. So yes, we definitely operated in that system when working in specific places. When working in other places, it was a free for all. It's really nuanced. So I relate and also don't.
I get you. Yeah, I personally tried as hard as I could to stay away from like deficit modeling because it makes me feel icky, and I don't like ableism.
Could you talk on that a little bit more, because I want to hear your perspective on it?
Sure. Well, deafness there's really, I don't talk about that part of my work very much because I am a hearing person, and I think it's important, nothing about us without us. Me as a hearing person talking about deaf culture and deaf people. As an educator of the deaf, I worked with students with hearing loss. I taught mixed grade classrooms, and I managed to teach every grade from 1st through 12th at some point during my career. I had deaf colleagues that I worked with at the school. My preferred modality of instruction was using a bilingual approach. So using ASL to teach concepts in English.
Which I think people who are not in these fields would not understand is considered bilingualism, because they think of ASL as being the same language as English, only signed, and it's very much not like that, because there are at least 2 major signed languages within the United States, and across the world, hundreds. And the ones in America don't even necessarily follow the same syntax, word order, word structure as American English.
And really, where I worked, we had a pretty wide continuum of student needs. So in any given day, I would use everything from like voice off ASL to sign supported speech when I was working one-on-one with students. And I prefer to use sign off ASL with whole group instruction and then pull out support as needed with my students as best I could. There are no perfect places and perfect approaches.
No, there aren't.
And I had students who were deaf or hard of hearing with no additional disabilities, and then students who had, who were intersectional or multiply marginalized at various intersections. There was a cochlear implant surgeon in the state who thought our school shouldn't exist at all.
Oh gosh, this is where you're getting into such a fascinating area.
Right, and that's not something I really want to talk about too much.
Right.
I'll just say that we had a lot of kids with implants, and I've seen a wide variety of different kinds of success with implants, and I've seen some students really struggle with them. And we did the best we could with every kid who had an implant to provide as much communication, language, and educational support as we could.
This is where the both and model is so it's such a thing, because you can't
communication, language.
But in every, I know you don't want to get into this too much, but I also think that it's really important to recognize that if people who do not have a disability view a disability as a bad thing, then by virtue of that concept, They cannot look at it with an altruistic support like a system, right? They can't look at somebody and say, you're disabled, let me help you. That's not okay. If you look at somebody and say, you are dealing with these things affect your life. Here's how we can make your life easier for you. Here's how we can help you find what works for you. That's the thing. That's
right. Like this is how your body works. This is how society is structured.
Yes.
With barriers to your differences. And these are the tools that I'm going to teach you and help you learn to use.
But only if they're in alignment.
Yeah.
Only if they're in alignment with what you need. It is not appropriate for us to decide what is or isn't right for people. And that's what I think people who are not in fields like this, and some people who are, what they don't understand, right? This is not about when you go in and you're creating a treatment plan, you are not creating a treatment plan for you. Like,
but I want to. And that was something as a very idealistic first and second year teacher, you have this is the way things should be, and then you learn how the world works, and you're like, no. And like I still had some definite hard and fast, like these are things I will not do, which I think is important to have those parameters and ethics, obviously, around how you practice in the field. But I definitely got more flexible with some of my approaches as I went on teaching.
Pretty fascinating. On a whole, on a large scale.
We've talked about like our jobs a little bit, our old lives a little bit. We've both carried pieces of that into our artwork. So I was an English teacher for a number of years, and I use a lot of text and vintage books and things in my collages. And you use a lot of medical models.
I do.
Or like medical imagery in your art. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I can. I had like the last few years. So you had mentioned this, and it's important in this context. You had mentioned that as a person who does not have a certain disability, you cannot talk about it, right, in a way that is truly authentic because you can't experience it. At the same time, you can talk about it from an outside perspective, an empathetic perspective, a way in which you're, working to understand it.
Right. Like as far as nothing about us without us, like,
yes,
as a hearing person, making decisions for deaf people, like there were deaf people on the student's education team, and the student was on their education team making their decisions for their IEP educational plan. The problem happens when we have, for example, organizations that are supposedly working on behalf of autistic people who don't have autistic people on their board of directors.
There it is.
Right?
That's a big deal.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where I am.
And that's what I'm trying. That's what I'm trying to, and perhaps not doing a great job of explaining. But what I'm saying is basically that I did not want to begin working in medical models with things that I could not relate to specifically, because the weight of a medical diagnosis is so individualized that there's no way that I could fully relate. So the idea of utilizing medical scans became a very personal thing because I was using my own scans. I have had a vocal injury. So I've used the scans of my vocal folds. I have used scans to evaluate shape and line, understanding that our bodies are a part of nature and nature has forms that it repeats. And they're mathematical. They make sense to us. They're things we understand. And I wanted to approach my art with that same sort of analysis, that scientific method of digging into how we see things, how we interpret them. So over the course of the pandemic, I kind of encountered a 2 or 3 week period where I had 4 or 5 really, really serious, life-altering, hey, we need you to get in emergency situations. It was a very scary 2 weeks. And at the same time, I had to continue being a parent to my kids. I had to continue on with the everyday while I'm waiting for, terrible news. And only one of those turned out to be terrible news. And it's still not even terrible. It's very up in the air. So taking these images of these scans of my eyes, my vocal folds, my breasts, my uterus, my body, and then the human figure. Taking those forms and reinterpreting them in my art has given me a sense of safety and control and the ability to see things in a different way.
It's really powerful.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. I hope it is. It's powerful for me. And I would hope that in the way that I'm able to present it, it feels powerful to other people. I've had people reach out to me and mention that it is meaningful to them. But I think as a creative human, you're always kind of looking for the next way to level something up, you know?
Right.
So I'm not ready to go, okay, this is powerful. I'm ready to do the next thing.
Well, some of my artwork is about my migraine experience. Yes. And like, it always feels good when another person who experiences migraine attacks says, oh my gosh, I want to buy that painting. For one, because I need to eat. And it pays the bills. But that's secondary to the fact that something I created resonates with another person.
Yeah. Yes.
And of those migraine paintings that I've sold, all of them have been to somebody else who has migraine disease. And every note that
is
and I always
very powerful.
And I always send a card with every piece I send to a collector, and all the cards on the migraine ones are like, I'm really sorry that you have this terrible disease. But I'm really glad that this artwork resonated with you and will live in your home forever.
Yes.
Because misery loves company.
Or we just love being able to feel seen.
We love to feel seen and to know that somebody understands us.
Yeah. Validated in our human condition. This is all finite. We are only here for a short period of time. In the grand scheme of things, these moments are horrible for us, but how they matter on a large scale, I think, is up to us. I think we get to decide how we push that narrative in the short time that we have.
I knew.
You knew what?
I knew you were going to somehow work the word finite or infinite into this conversation, and you just did.
I love the word finite. I love the word discrete, but I also love the idea of indiscretion, of immortal, eternal, unmeasurable eternity. And I mean, I've talked to you about it this week because I found that documentary on Netflix that, well, it found me. To be very clear, it popped right on up. The algorithm knows me by now. It's like, the algorithm is like, by the way, we know that to work out, you have to be watching a documentary because you can't just be watching something frivolous and fun. You have to be watching something that makes you think and distracts you enough to keep going. So here's one we found for you. And it was exceptional. It's called
A Trip to Infinity.
There it is.
Yep, because I watched it and live tweeted it.
And what do you think?
I'm glad I watched it during the day. If I had watched it before I went to bed, no bueno.
It's fascinating, right?
It would have been too much because I already have enough trouble falling asleep without medical assistance. With medical assistance. It was really good. It's
so good. Oh my God, it's so good.
People with epilepsy need to be warned. There's a lot of flashing.
I was shocked that they didn't have a warning for that. But then again, you and I have worked in circles where that makes a lot more sense than for everyone.
I'm on anti-epileptic drugs. I pay attention to these things.
Maybe I just missed it.
Huh?
Did I just miss the warning? Maybe I just missed
No, I don't know. I didn't see it either because I was Captain ADHD over here. I was also texting.
Oh, okay.
And my dog was next to me, right, the whole time. I thought the graphics were incredible.
They were so cool. They did a great job
of conceptualizing really difficult abstract concepts.
Extremely. I mean,
and
there's a reason.
I did not have the existential crisis I was expecting.
I did warn you. Yeah. To be very clear to listeners right now, I messaged Elle and said, you need to watch this. I think you'd love it. Also, though, it might be an emotional trigger because it is very triggering. The idea of infinity. I guess maybe we should even start with a summary of what it's about, which is that it is a documentary that looks at the quantum physics, the calculus of and concept of eternity and infinity. Like, what is infinity? What does it mean? The idea that you can't even calculate infinity into the future. You have to calculate it into itself, into some discrete number. The concept of how
they tackle it through mathematics, through physics, through philosophy.
Philosophy as well. Yes. Good call.
Yep.
It's incredible.
I think one of my favorite, I was tweeting some of my favorite lines from it. Like, two of my favorite things that were really grounding for me was, the one guy was talking about how, he felt so pointless.
Yeah, so small.
In relation to infinity until he fell in love. He said, and that matters.
And that matters. Yes.
And like, it's not just falling in love, but it's love, and it's other people. It's like all we have is each other.
Yeah.
And it's like you were saying before, when we're going through bad things or terrible things, it's really terrible for a moment. And that moment is important to us. I mean, it is important to us.
It's
and it's
everything. It's also nothing. It's everything. And it forms how we see the world. It's how we interpret everything about everything else. But it's nothing in the scale of the test of time.
It has meaning because we give it meaning. And that's not to be dismissive of it.
At all. Because it is your infinity.
What we have.
The infinite moment of now.
Yeah. And the infinite moments between ourselves and each other.
I agree. Yeah.
That part was really grounding for me. And the part with the philosopher. And I don't want to sound like I'm coming down on philosophers or philosophy majors, because some of the people that are very dear to me are humanities people, myself.
I love humanities people.
Yeah, I love the humanities. I love philosophy. And so by quoting him, it could sound like I'm downplaying him compared to the mathematicians. But one of the last lines of the film is he's like, I have a hard time conceptualizing anything bigger than 10, really. So how can I conceptualize infinity? He's like, I loved that. He's like, I can't really visualize 1,000 of anything. And I relate to that, because I have a hard time with big numbers and really, really small things. So, and they covered both of those things in the documentary. I think everyone does. They're talking about like subatomic particles, and they're talking about the size and shape of the universe and this singularity, in a black hole. And the whole time I'm like, okay, this is cool, but my brain is going to explode.
That's why I've watched it twice.
But they put in some really well-placed little storytelling breaks.
Yes.
And some really good
and graphics,
concrete nuggets to sort of like hang on to, that made it really refreshing and beautiful.
Yes, to all of it. And also, I just think that it's, I mean, I yearn for anything that makes me think about something from a different perspective. Again, one of those reasons that I do think that I'm a strange person when it comes down to things, because I think a lot of people want to be told what they already feel, so that they feel comfortable and confident in the world. It gives them a sense of control. I am the absolute opposite. I want to know everything I don't know. And if I've heard it, give me more. And if you don't have more, tell me where I can find it. So for me, this was very comforting, because this is how my brain thinks. The way that it was set up.
Really, it was a documentary, so it's like all based in like math and physics and things.
Yeah.
I found myself comparing it to, spoilers, the last season of The Good Place.
I love The Good Place.
I just kept waiting for someone to talk about the time knife. Like, I saw the time knife.
This is the bad place. And that's how it feels like. And also it feels like this is the good place.
Right, but like the last season in particular, where they really get into like all the, like the time, the concept of time and eternity.
Jeremy Bearimy.
And like the time knife.
The whole thing.
And I was like, I get it. It makes sense.
I feel like this is an appropriate time to mention that I feel like my husband and I are basically Chidi and Eleanor. Except I'm like a less bad version of her. And I say bad in such a discreet way, but I don't mean it that way. I just mean like, I'm not a badass at all. I don't want to be a badass. I am more like Chidi in that way. Ryan's also, he just would never think to do something like that. So that's where he's like Chidi. And I just feel like they are very relatable characters for me.
And Chidi is adorable, and so is Ryan.
He is pretty cute. I like the guy. We're celebrating 11 years married, like next week.
Oh.
and like 18 together, which, speaking of infinity, feels like it.
Right? When did we get old?
Oh, we've always been old.
I thought this is going to be a great way to sort of just end the whole conversation, since you've mentioned being strange, and it kind of goes without saying that I am too, but I'm just going to throw my hat in that ring. People used to tell me I was an old soul, but it turns out it just meant that I'm really weird and they didn't have anything else to say.
Do you think that's what it means?
Yes.
So I have a different perspective on this, but I welcome yours.
That's fine.
I feel like when I was told that I was an old soul, and whenever I have considered it about anybody else, I've always thought of it as being a child who is very attentive, very observant, and wise beyond their years. Which in the context of childhood does make them strange, except that only exists in how we apply it. No child is like any other child.
Right. Also, childhood trauma makes us hypervigilant and extra observant and possibly wise beyond our years because we've seen some shit.
I think that's the observant component. When you're a hypervigilant person,
is it possible that trauma just makes us weird?
If that were the case, I think everyone would be weird because trauma happens to all of us in varying degrees, I would argue. I think there are very few of us who come out of life with not having dealt with something emotional or painful, and how it affects you, is the crux of that.
Well, there's our next documentary. Everyone is weird. I think you've uncovered a nugget of truth there.
I would watch it. I'd watch it. That is not to say that all trauma is the same. That is not to say that, all people deal with things in the same way, but,
Right. But my brain can't quantify my trauma compared to your trauma. And it's not the trauma Olympics.
Right. Exactly. Which harkens back to the conversation too about disability, because there's a wide range of what it means to be abled or differently abled or disabled or not abled.
Right. I'm going to hammer this home for ever and ever. Disability is normal.
Disability is normal. It's just a form of life. It is a different way of interacting in the world, given your abilities and what you are able to do. If we focus on what people can do and what then they need to do in order to feel safe and successful, we'll be fine. But if we keep inflicting judgment on the idea of disability, we're going to have problems forever.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of HURF. To view the complete show notes and all the links mentioned in today's episode, or to get a full transcript of the episode, visit hoorfpodcast.com. That's HOORF podcast.com. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you can receive new episodes right when they're released. And if you're enjoying our podcast, I'd love to have you leave us a review in Apple Podcasts. Reviews are one of the major ways that Apple ranks their podcasts, so even though it only takes you a few seconds, it really does make a difference for us. Become a patron. For $3 a month, you can support the creation of this podcast, pay my editor, and join a community of fellow caregivers out here just doing our best. Thank you again for joining me, Elle Billing, in this episode of HURF. Until next time, be excellent to each other. HURF is hosted by Elle Billing at Elle and Wink. Audio editing by Ricky Cummings at Ricky Poo. Music composed by Ricky Cummings. HURF is a production of Elle and Wink Art Studio, all rights reserved. HURF Podcast can be found on social media channels at HURF Podcast, at HOORF Podcast.
Good luck to your listeners having to hear me.